Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Rohit Agarwala. I'm a senior technical leader at Cisco and also the solution architect for the Google and Cisco partnership. I'm joined with me, Alan.
Hi guys, I'm Alan Name, product management at Google, focused on Kubernetes and Google Kubernetes Engine, and been working very closely from the Google side with Rohit around the Google-Cisco partnership.
Cool. So in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the Google and Cisco partnership, give you guys an overview of what the use cases are behind the partnership and how we are architecting the solution. And also talk about one of the key components called Istio, which is an integral part of the solution overall. And then Alan is going to walk through a demo as well of an example use case implementation that we are targeting for our GA solution, which is targeted end of second half of later this year. Again, we'll blow through a couple of few marketing slides in the beginning, but get to the technical part pretty quickly because it's good to meet all of you back compared to last year where I had presented to Ivan and Dominic Conti. So looking forward to this session. Again, this is kind of a quick picture that shows the state of enterprise IT. This is, again, given disparate teams and how new technologies have been emerging, the landscape within an enterprise IT is kind of becoming as complicated as new technologies come. And that's why what we are starting to see that a multi-cloud world is starting to emerge. And this is kind of some of the numbers from a survey. And on the left, you can see 85% are either using cloud already or are evaluating public cloud. And out of the 85% that are using public cloud, you can see 87% have taken some step towards a hybrid cloud strategy, and 94% are planning to use multiple clouds.
When I see those numbers, I always ask myself, does this include Salesforce and Office 365?
That's a good question. As part of the survey, yes. Because in the survey, they don't exactly call out whether it's an IaaS or a SaaS application that's running. It's about consumption of the public cloud. So to be fair, you're absolutely right that it just doesn't capture the IaaS, but also extends to the SaaS. And so from a customer's perspective, what this means is that within their environment, they're evolving their architecture. They're evolving their infrastructure to support this kind of an environment. They're adding more services. And when I say adding more services, what this implies is that the cloud is moving at a much faster rate in terms of providing services like MySQL, machine learning, and other big table query kind of services that need not be available on the on-prem side. And you need a mechanism to start consuming these innovative services from the public cloud in a much more easier form. And then finally, in an enterprise way, manage these environments, right? The IT administrator at the end of the day cares about the consistent environment that he or she has within the on-prem environment for its application that's getting moved into the public cloud. So how do you ensure that from a network connectivity perspective, from an orchestration perspective, from a policy perspective, all of those factors that were getting applied on the workloads that are running in the enterprise environment, how do you consistently apply that into the public cloud or in the hybrid cloud environment? And so that's where you will see some of the use cases as part of the solution that we've been targeting and how we are architecting that solution. So Cisco's cloud portfolio, again, last slide before I pass it to Alan in terms of marketing. So we are kind of divided into three main buckets here. Cloud products. At this event, you will see a bunch of specifically Cisco products that are running within the cloud and enabling the consumption as well as protection and advising how you can move your workloads into the cloud. We have got our multi-cloud portfolio. Again, this was announced last year and captures against our four main buckets of advice: consume, protect, and secure. And finally, the hybrid cloud solutions, where we are working very closely with these cloud providers, including Google, where we are architecting a joint solution and a joint go-to-market in terms of enabling a cohesive, consistent solution for our enterprise as well as service provider customers. With that, I'll pass it on to Alan.
Thank you, Rohit. So hybrid is reality. These are just some numbers to reiterate what Rohit was saying originally. When you look at the market today, less than 10% of enterprise IT applications have actually moved to the public cloud, right? There's a reason for that. It's hard. And Markets and Research did a study showing that you know, by 2021, the hybrid cloud market's going to hit somewhere around $92 billion. That's, and that consists of hardware, software, services, you know, a whole bunch of components associated with it. You know, a lot of these companies that we talk to, you know, typically they face quite challenging mandates where they need, you know, they're in their own data centers today, and there's a mandate where, you know, they need to move to the public cloud over the next 3 to 5, even 10 years, right? But that journey is going to involve a very heterogeneous environment where you have to manage different applications to actually get to that end goal. So we see hybrid as really a means to the end, but it's here. And the way Google is approaching hybrid is very much through our open source technologies. Our strategy is very much focused on the open hybrid cloud. And when I say open, I'm talking about open source technologies like Kubernetes, right, which are based on years and years of experience Google's had in running and managing containers, right? The fact that we spin up 2 billion containers a week, we built expertise around that. Now, one of the key differentiators Google Cloud has from a hybrid strategy perspective is rather than tell our users that to gain the benefits of cloud, you need to lift, shift, and modernize. We're telling people that you can actually modernize in place and move to the cloud at your own pace, right? And we will go down that journey with you. And this is where the Google-Cisco partnership really comes in. When you look at the traction that containers and Kubernetes has had in the industry over the last 3 years, the adoption rate has been phenomenal. And really, Kubernetes and containers have been a driving force behind giving customers the ability to run these applications, make them portable, run them in heterogeneous environments, and build out like a hybrid strategy. And when we talk to our customers about modernizing in place and running Kubernetes on-premise, the biggest challenge that they face is, how do I get started, right? How do I get this thing configured? How do I run on VMware? How do I run on bare metal? How do I connect networking? Those are really hard problems to solve. So Google and Cisco got together and built this open hybrid solution that's really, think of it as a turnkey deployment model where you have Kubernetes in the cloud, and now through Cisco you have Kubernetes on-prem, and things are just connected between your data center and Google Cloud so that you can run containers and run cloud native applications efficiently and consistently.
So how does that work with the things you told us just minutes ago, where you say a lot of the customers already have VMware or Microsoft in place? You come in with something completely new. How is that adoption? How is that working out? Is it so easy that they just put it in and they go, or?
When you say they have Microsoft or VMware, are you talking about containers or you're talking about existing systems?
They got those as existing systems, right? Yeah.
So, you know, your systems, we're not replacing those systems. Those systems will remain there. But for applications that you want to modernize or build new applications, let's say on-prem, that have data dependencies that can't move to the cloud, you can take advantage of what we're offering here, have that running in your environment, and it can coexist with your existing investments in VMware and Microsoft technology.
And in what sense is that coexisting with those platforms? So how does it hook into that?
You know, it's like dinosaurs and mammals. You hope that the dinosaurs will eventually die out in 1 million years, and the mammals will take over.
Yeah.
Right. And we do have a use case, and we'll cover that, which describes how you actually enable your modern applications hook into the legacy systems. And as part of that solution architecture, we're ensuring that we take care of those workloads that will not be able to move to the cloud for X reasons, right? Could be because of privacy, could just be they're not able to. So how do you still enable hooking into those systems as part of this solution?
But just to recap, the big picture is we are talking about containers. And you guys are talking about containers that I could run on premises or in the public cloud or both. And well, let's hope that the legacy dies.
Eventually, yes, but there is this period where things need to coexist.
Right.
So, and we'll show you some examples. But to summarize, really, what the partnership brings forward is, Cisco brings networking, security, the private cloud infrastructure, the multi-cloud management, and most importantly, from what customers tell me, that support model, right? Single support model for managing your hybrid environment. Google, we bring our innovations around open source technology, containers, cloud. Bridge that together, and you've got a pretty compelling hybrid cloud story. When we announced, there's quite a bit of buzz in the industry, just sample of some of the reactions from the various publications out there. So the use cases that we're targeting, and this is based on data that we spent quite a bit of time talking to enterprise customers, is the first challenge that we wanted to solve is just going back to your example around how do I bring these existing investments into this new world. So the first use case is consuming legacy systems from the public cloud, right? Today, it's a hard thing to do, right? But we want to make it easy. We want to make it turnkey. So that's the first use case we're addressing. The second is really around cap and grow, right? You've got applications that are running on-prem, but perhaps you want to extend these applications to take advantage of cloud services. How do you do that? How do you bridge identity models that are very different between on-prem and public cloud? How do you do that in a seamless fashion? That's the second area. Third, which is really, this is where you're really starting to bring developers and IT together, is how do I write my application once and deploy it anywhere, right? Deploy it in branches, deploy it in disconnected locations. How do I bring that experience to those environments? And that's the third use case that we're addressing. So I'll hand it to Rohit to go a little detail.
So before you move to the next slide, I have a question. I come from the enterprise IT world, a world which is very monolithic, very conservative. Do you talk with large enterprises? Do they have the mindset to embrace these kind of technologies? Because I don't think that adopting the technology is really the problem, but it's more a problem of mindset into moving from siloed IT and moving to that. So how do you see that? Do you talk with customers? Yes. What's their reaction to that?
Yeah. So I see that a lot. And typically, most of these conversations start with the networking and security discussion, right? In terms of taking advantage of public cloud and figuring out how that plugs into their existing applications. The second area, when it comes to containers, is really all about the process. It's that mindset where developers do everything, and IT just basically takes what a developer hands them and deploys it. We get into a lot of conversations around how the mindset changes now that you're introducing another layer, which is really around application ops. So from there, we typically spend quite a bit of time with customers talking about how do you take that monolith and figure out what you can service enable, right? What you can move to the cloud. And those are lengthy discussions. And what we find is typically customers that are forward-thinking and willing to, take chances, right, with technology. And you'll find that with a lot of these customers, it's their developers that are pushing them in that direction. And to keep these developers, they have to adopt these new technologies, and it's happening.
Agreed. And just to recap in terms of use cases and how this architecture fits in, so the idea around the use cases were to enable, firstly, from the public cloud consumption of legacy or traditional systems. Second was from on-prem consume innovative PaaS services. And third was, again, consistent environment in both public cloud as well as the on-prem. So this is kind of the overall architecture, high-level architecture picture. So for the first use case, the way example implementation of that could be is where you're using Google's Apigee to be on the on-prem environment. And so Google's Apigee is essentially an API catalog, if you will, that can front-end and provide a kind of a facade in front of your legacy systems. So your containers that are running in the public cloud, they can actually hit these legacy systems through that API endpoint that is getting exposed through Apigee. So imagine a MySQL database or a HANA, SAP HANA backend implementations, anything those are not able to move into the public cloud, and you want to be able to expose them to for your containers that are running in public cloud, we are enabling Apigee in the on-prem. But the important piece here is also from a security perspective as well as from a network connectivity. So things like Cisco's CSR 1000V, which you have already probably heard being popular in like AWS Marketplace. We are offering multiple connectivity options as part of the solution for these workloads to be connected from the public cloud to the on-prem as well as vice versa. So Google already has their direct interconnect, which is over the public internet itself, their external IP addresses. With Google Cloud VPN, you can use the IPsec model, but then also enabling Cisco devices that can provide much more higher capabilities in terms of providing connectivity. We're going to be enabling that. Secondly, from a security perspective, things like StealthWatch Cloud, which was part of our observable network acquisition that we did last year. What StealthWatch Cloud gives you the capability is to actually monitor the traffic for your VPN traffic, both from the on-prem side as well as from the cloud side. And by learning the pattern of the traffic using the entity modeling, it can actually give you alerts in case if a VM or a container that's running in either of those environments get accessed by some resource that you're not supposed to access, right? So it's providing you that security layer as you are connecting resources across these two environments. So the networking and the security is really critical for us and for the IT administrators that we have seen, and we wanted to enable and bake that as part of all of our use cases. Secondly, from an on-prem environment, how do you actually enable a Kubernetes environment on-prem? Like Alan was mentioning, the developers are pushing the envelope by actually starting their own Kubernetes clusters. But when they want to move into production, where is that IT administrator, where is that IT ops team that will stand behind and support that Kubernetes cluster on-prem? On the GKE environment, you can get a managed master Kubernetes deployment and you can just focus on your application deployment. But what about the on-prem environment? So that's where we are working very closely with Google to provide on top of our HyperFlex infrastructure, which is a hyper-converged infrastructure with compute and storage. We're enabling the Cisco Container Platform, which you'll also hear about it later today in the day. And that Cisco Container Platform gives you a turnkey experience to spin up multiple Kubernetes clusters on top of Cisco infrastructure. And with that, from a networking perspective, you can enable Contiv, which can give you VXLAN connectivity for your containers that are running on-prem, but you can also enable it through the ACI, Contiv ACI driver. So all of your endpoint groups and your contracts for your containers that are running within the Kubernetes environment get implemented within the ACI fabric itself. So with HyperFlex, with ACI, with Cisco Container Platform, now you get a full turnkey experience in setting up a production-ready IT infrastructure as well as a platform that matches and provides similar APIs for deploying your container workloads.
Okay, I have like 10 questions. I'll only ask 3. Apigee, it looks to me like some sort of an application level load balancer and an abstraction layer. So as the container application, I call some API endpoint and someone magically figures out whether the server is on-prem or in the cloud or wherever and just does the connection and that's it. How far off am I?
Except for the load balancing piece.
Yeah. Okay. API gateway that does transformation into more modern protocol, so non-rest to rest.
Mm-hmm. The second one, you mentioned the security product that detects when someone connects to a container service that he shouldn't. Well, that implies that you have some sensor somewhere that sees that connection. So how is that thingy working?
Good question, absolutely. So on the on-prem side, we do deploy sensors that actually hook into the NetFlow logs or span port to collect all of that information, connection information as it is making. We enable that also in the public cloud. So public cloud providers provide a mechanism to extract some of the VPC flow logs and such. And so you can pull that information from both ends and make that call. Like, okay, these are the connections that are trusted, these are not. I'm going to make an alert when they're not.
So you are limited by the telemetry that the public cloud provider provides.
On the public cloud side, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you go a little bit on detail? What kind of flow data Google provides for that solution? What can we get out if we have a Google installation?
So if you have, is the question, if you have a Kubernetes cluster running in Google, what kind of data that you would?
So I have some workloads in the Google Cloud, and I want to secure that, yeah? So on-prem was mentioned the Salesforce solution that is based on getting flow data. I see all what comes in and out and get some intelligence about it. What is the capability from the enterprise? Most times it is, let's say, challenge. You have no data from the cloud, yeah? You don't know exactly what is going out and into my cloud environment, yeah?
Right. So there are metrics that you can capture around compute, storage, networking that you can configure on the cloud side that will provide, various information around packet flow, what's actually traversing the network, what's going into in and out of your VPCs, what's flowing through VPN. You can get that configured on the Google Cloud, then using the Cisco products, bridge that into StealthWatch.
Is this an API that StealthWatch is calling, or is this traditional flow data?
So each of these cloud providers, StealthWatch works with like Amazon as well. So what essentially it does is within that VPC, everything that's happening, you can hook into all the actions that are happening within that VPC. So whether you're creating a compute resource, whether you're attaching it to a VPC network, all of that information, including IP addresses, are available to you as a log. And you can ingest into your SaaS application. In our case, it's the StealthWatch Cloud SaaS application, which is ingesting all of that VPC information. So you need to firstly provide that VPC account information into StealthWatch Cloud. So from there, it can access that VPC flow log, get in everything that's going on within that VPC, and from there, parse it in a way so that you can intelligently then make decisions on whether a connection is secure or not from a particular resource.
So just on detail, you get the configuration changes or you get the flow data?
No, from the public cloud provider, you only get the configuration and all the actions that are happening within the VPC. From the on-prem side, you do get data about the actual traffic that is flowing into the VPC.
Yeah, so it's nice to have that, but for me it's only half the way, yeah? I would also like to see what is in and outgoing. I know it's hard for you as Google to provide that data, yeah, but it is good that you think you are secure, but it's much better if you have actually log data about it, yeah?
Yep, great. And then I think when we talk about Istio, we'll also talk about the load balancing aspect that you were talking about. Also in the second use case, I think I mentioned about the Kubernetes on-prem environment on top of Hyperflex. We'll also be enabling another open source project called Service Catalog, and that is the demo that Alan is going to show, which will essentially enable containers that are running on the on-prem side to very easily consume PaaS services from Google Cloud. Again, this is going to be based on the Open Service Broker API-based implementation that all of the Google services are getting exposed and consumable on the on-prem side. The security layer, and as well as the orchestration and the networking options that I talked about, they still apply in this second use case as well.
Okay, now my third question. Yes. You keep mentioning Kubernetes.
Yes.
What about Docker Swarm?
So at least I'll give you the Cisco answer. So from a Cisco's perspective, our customers, Docker is also a partner, and we do have the MTA program with Docker in order to enable customers that are interested in modernizing their traditional applications using Docker. We in fact just a month back released a full-blown Cisco validated design of running a Docker Swarm cluster with Contiv on top of Cisco infrastructure. So we do have customers that are interested in going specifically Docker route to provide on top of Cisco infrastructure that. And Docker, of course, have supported Kubernetes as well, which Alan can talk about.
Yeah. So 12 months ago, if you asked this question, many customers were asking Kubernetes, Swarm, Mesos, where do I go? The landscape has changed quite a bit now. Kubernetes has become the standard for container orchestration. as evident with both Docker and Mesosphere adopting the Kubernetes API. So I think we live in a world where they coexist, but for running production workloads, containers, Kubernetes is the way.
So you think, just to clarify, you think Docker, Swarm, and so all will fade away and Kubernetes will be the golden industry standard, yeah?
I can't say that, but what I can say is just looking at the market metrics that I've been seeing, from adoption rate, Kubernetes is becoming the de facto standard.
I think we've got just 5 minutes, so I'll quickly wrap this up and then do the demo, I think. So the last point here is about Istio, and this is where it ties into a third use case. I can actually talk to it just, which ties into our third use case, which is to provide a consistent environment. So service mesh is a very, it's not a new, but it's become a very popular layer between the infrastructure and the application in order to provide a common way of actually getting data about your application, tracing, telemetry, monitoring, canary deployments, all of this capabilities as part of the service mesh. And Istio as a control plane is enabling that by leveraging Envoy as a data plane to insert the sidecar proxy in every container that gets deployed. So from an architecture perspective, I mean, I'll not go into too much detail, but there are 3 control plane components: Pilot, which is responsible for pushing the configuration; Mixer, which is actually ingesting all of the telemetry information as the traffic goes through your containers; and then Istio Auth, which kind of secures service-to-service communication by encrypting that traffic over TLS. Again, the important point here is the deployment of the sidecar proxy, which is based on Envoy that Lyft had open source. And we are enabling that in each and every container deployment as part of our third use case implementation. So imagine a use case where a developer deploys a dev container in Google Cloud and then deploys a production version on the on-prem side. From a client perspective, you can continue to now hit the same service name without even actually knowing where your traffic is going. So for example, Rohit can continuously go into the dev container that's running on the Google Cloud side, but when Alan accesses, it goes into the production environment that's running into the on-prem side. So with Istio, you can enable that service mesh layer between your infrastructure and your application, give you a very transparent load balancing capability, intelligent routing, and then at the end of the day, provide the telemetry information to your operations team as well. So I think we have just a few minutes left. We'll quickly do a demo of our second use case using the service catalog that Alan is going to talk about.
Yeah, so in the essence of time, I'm going to roll through this pretty quickly, but this particular demo is a bookshelf application that is being deployed both on Google Cloud and on-prem on Cisco gear. The whole point here is I wrote the application and didn't have to change any code and basically deployed it in these 2 locations. This is a containerized application. It runs on Kubernetes. The data store for this application, the actual inventory, is stored in a Google service, which is our PubSub service. And to get access to PubSub, you need to have credentials. You have to have a service account. So you also have to go to Google Cloud and access the Identity Access Management service. So the way we accomplish that is through this Open Service Broker API. So both the on-prem and the Google Cloud applications use what's called a service catalog. And think of a service catalog as a lookup registry into an Open Service Broker API. So most cloud providers today, including Google, are starting to expose their services using Open Service Broker. Right, and at Google now we have, I think, over 5 of our services that we expose. The way to consume those services is through Service Catalog. Service Catalog runs on cloud-native platforms like Kubernetes, like Cloud Foundry, and it gives you a consistent way of consuming these services, so you don't have to worry about semantics. Under the hood, what actually happens in our example here for the demo is we consume the PubSub service and the IAM service. So Service Catalog goes and retrieves a service account, and it stores a service account as a secret within the Kubernetes cluster so that any container that's trying to access that service now can get really think of it as auto authentication into that service running in Google Cloud. So our demo's pretty simple, actually. So let me start my recording. So as far as, make sure here I've got, this is still working, wonderful. So Kubernetes, basically on Google Cloud, we have what's called Google Kubernetes Engine, which is a managed service around Kubernetes. You basically say create cluster, and you pretty much go in and you specify how many nodes that you want for that particular cluster. So in our case here, I've got 2 clusters created. I can easily go in, create a cluster, give it a name, specify what region it's running in. I can even have my cluster span zones for resiliency and have my control plane deployed in multiple zones, and all the apps, all the containers deployed in that cluster span multiple zones. For our case here, we already have a GKE Kubernetes cluster running with this bookshelf application. We've taken the same deployment and we've deployed it on this on-premise environment here. So let me go ahead and show you. I've got these nodes. So these 3 nodes are running on Cisco gear, and they're running Kubernetes. And the actual deployment that's running here is this bookstore deployment is pulling a set of credentials from Service Catalog and populating them into Kubernetes engine. I know I'm going through a lot of detail here that might be losing you, but think of it as your containers on-prem and your containers in Google Cloud are consuming Google services in a consistent fashion using Service Catalog, so that application can move around very easily.
I think you might just want to show the portal of ordering and show the logs.
Yep. So this is our ordering. So this is actually the application deployed on Google Cloud. So it's our books online. This is the same application that is running on-prem. And this is a inventory system. So this is running in Google Cloud that's pulling PubSub. Whenever an event hits PubSub from either on-prem or Google Cloud, it triggers an event and lists it here. So I can come along and say, order, then go to my on-premise kiosks. So these are running in a store, order. Now hit my inventory system, and you see my reader capturing all these order events. So build once, deploy anywhere, seamlessly integrated connectivity between on-prem and public cloud. And that's pretty much the demo.